Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his political rival, Benny Gantz, just signed documents to form a unity government in Israel. Both gentlemen claim they will implement President Trump's deal of the century once this occurs. We'll talk about it on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me on this edition of End of the Age. For those of you that are watching on our social networking sites, we're having some technical difficulties with some of our equipment here in the studio, and you're just going to see my picture up there today rather than a live feed if you're wondering what's going on and why I'm not up there. But I am live today, so I do thank you all for joining me, whether you're on the radio or on our live stream social networking sites. Now, wow, finally, Israel has a government. Unless something just crazy happens over the next few days, it appears that Netanyahu and Gantz have signed a unity government deal. I mean, we've waited for this for over a year now. They've been through 3 elections, and we're headed towards a 4th election. But they finally got it done, and it's very prophetic what they're fixing to do. So let's get off into it, and I'm going to give you something I don't know if you've heard of before here in just a little while concerning Biden, Joe Biden. You say, well, what's he got to do with all of this? Well, you're going to see as we get into it that Netanyahu may not be too fond of dealing with him in the future should he be elected. You understand our elections are coming up here in November, and you got to look at everything Netanyahu is, from his standpoint, what's he looking at? I mean, is there a possibility that Trump could get defeated by Biden? There is a possibility of that. So you got to put yourself in Netanyahu's perspective. What's the first thing you would be trying to do after forming a government, knowing that that's a possibility in November? So we're going to get off into all that, and I'll tell you a little bit, something you may not have known about Trump, Biden. So, of course, Netanyahu and Gantz signed a unity government deal. And the agreement is going to allow Netanyahu and the Likud to retain premiership for a year and a half. And after that, he'll be replaced by Benny Gantz, the blue and white chair, as part of a rotation deal to be bound in law. And according to that coalition deal, Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be sworn in as the prime minister and the prime minister designate. And then Netanyahu will be, he'll serve 18 months as the prime minister, and then Gantz will get 18 months. And so the Times of Israel, and I read as much as I could. This happened just a couple hours ago. And so I read as much as I could before coming on the air today. The Times of Israel reports that the European Union has said that they are warning Gantz not to agree to West Bank annexation. So the European Union has been warning blue and white, the party leader Benny Gantz, not to agree to annex the parts of the West Bank in this coalition of negotiations with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of the Likud. And this was reported on Saturday night. The annexation of the Jordan Valley and Jewish settlements in the West Bank was a core election promise by Netanyahu. And it was a very important part because Netanyahu is saying, hey, this is our last opportunity ever. I mean, this is historic. We may never get this chance again because Donald Trump, President Trump, is the most pro-Israel president that has ever been in the office of the presidency of the United States. I mean, he's willing to pretty much give them what they want at this point. And Netanyahu's looking at that and saying, hey, we've got to get, if we're going to get this done, this annexation of the West Bank, which is what we really need, what we've longed for, President Trump's going to be the guy to get it. Well, Gantz, on the other hand, has mixed messages on this move. And he's generally opposed internationally, the move is, but it could be approved by Washington as part of the President Trump's Israel-Palestinian peace plan. So Gantz is having mixed messages on this, and because he's wanting to get the international community involved in it. Netanyahu does not want to. Gantz expressed support for annexing the Jordan Valley, but conditioned the measure on it by being coordinated with the international community and the countries that are involved. He's saying with the Palestinian Authority, with Jordan, which Israel has a peace deal with, Egypt, which Israel has a peace deal with, he's saying we need to get all of them involved because we don't want this peace agreement and to go in and annex a bunch of the West Bank to affect these peace agreements. So now you can kind of get a dynamic on what's going on here. He's having reservations. Netanyahu is saying, hey, let's go full bore off into this thing. So, and then, well, I know we're coming up to a break here, so I'm going to get deep off into some of this stuff. It's a lot of information, but man, we need to know what's going on because they finally got a government and they're fixing to mash the gas on this annexation process. And so got a lot of details coming up. You're going to want to hear them. And then how does Joe Biden play into all this? Well, we're going to talk about that when we get back from the break. So join me then.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank Endtime for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, End Time Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
So you understand that Benny Gantz, in 18 months, if everything goes as planned, in 18 months, Benny Gantz will take over as Prime Minister of Israel, and Netanyahu will give him that position. It's going to be turned over to him. Well, Gantz is believed to have withdrawn his previous demand for a right of veto on annexing the West Bank settlements under the U.S. peace plan, and that essentially cleared the way for it to take place if it is approved by Washington. But also remember, he's got the international community in the back of his mind as well. And so, you know, that may be the way the peace agreement, the prophesied peace agreement gets done. I don't know at this point, but it is possible because we know the international community is going to have to be involved at some point. And that's very key because right now EU officials, European Union officials spoke over the past few weeks with Gantz, his foreign affairs advisor, Melody Sharwitz, and told her that the European Union strongly opposes any unilateral move to extend Israel's sovereignty over the West Bank. And that was told by many European diplomats. And the officials were said to caution that any such move by a potential unity government would damage Israel's relations with the EU and elicit a strong response. Now, I could not find out what that response will be, but the fact of the matter is, Netanyahu doesn't recognize this. He's ready to go straight forward. But Gantz, it appears, is saying, oh, okay, now, I'm looking at the international community here. We don't want to step on anybody's toes, so we may have to look at that. Well, Netanyahu, this is key because Netanyahu, for the first 18 months, he's going to be the prime minister. He's going to be the one calling the shots. So we'll have to see how all this plays out. I mean, I just got this out of the news just prior to walking on the air today. And this EU official also told the diplomats that Gantz would try to influence the decision from within the government if it is eventually formed, and that Israel took control of the West Bank, we all know, from Jordan in 1967, the Six-Day War. And that move was never recognized by the international community, i.e. the EU and others. And the Palestinians are claiming the territory as part of their future state. So there's a lot going on here. Now, again, we'll have to watch and see how this all plays out. We look at it through the eyes of Bible prophecy and that lens. And you can tell, we followed this diligently for over the last year. And once you think you got something figured out with these Israel elections, man, they turn on a dime. You get up the next morning and it's just flip-flopped. And so we'll have to see how all this plays out. We can speculate about a lot of it. But we do know in the end there's going to be a peace agreement signed. We know that. And that's going to set a lot of things in motion. But I wanted to go through another article real quick with you to kind of give you a heads up. Well, this comes from the Al Monitor, and it says that the intel is that Netanyahu and Gantz strike a West Bank annexation deal. This was back on April 6th. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz struck a deal to annex parts of the West Bank as part of their bid to form a unity government. So it's in both of their minds to get it done. Who they have involved in the deal with them, that's the difference. But they both want to get the thing done. They understand that for Israel's security, that they need to annex these huge sections, especially the Jordan Valley, into Israel. Both of them recognize that, which is very key when we talk about them signing this unity government. Israel's ambassador to the United States, Danny Danon, noted that the agreement requires Netanyahu to consult with Gantz and Washington before moving ahead with the annexation. And that is outlined with President Donald Trump's plan. Well, Netanyahu is going to be fine with that because Netanyahu is going to be the prime minister for the first 18 months. And Danon said it's only a consultation. He said that he doesn't need the approval of Blue and White's Benny Gantz party, but he will need to consult with them. And he said, but I think more importantly, Prime Minister said that he will work with the U.S. administration and that he will do it with the approval of that administration. Well, that's one of the main things with Netanyahu is he's saying, look, President Trump's all on board with this. Just like the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, the moving of their embassy there, the recognition of their sovereignty over the Golan Heights. President Trump is saying, look, we're behind you. Let's go ahead and get the thing done. And so it is going to be a consultation with Gantz, but for the first 18 months, Netanyahu has the power. Danon hinted also that an annexation could come as soon as this summer, and it provided Israel successfully wards off the coronavirus pandemic and salvages the economy. That's a huge thing they're dealing with right now, and it kind of put the brakes on some of this. But he is saying that it is possible with this summer we might be able to get something done. He said people aren't dealing with the peace plan, people are dealing with the virus. And it's going to take some time. Hopefully in the summer we can go back and deal with these other issues. And then, of course, Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, he's dealing with the coronavirus situation on some aspects here in the United States as well. So, but they're wanting to get something done with this annexation process this summer. So they're not going to let the thing go for 18 months. I promise you Netanyahu won't. Netanyahu is going to try to get something done before November's elections, and I'll be talking about that here in just a moment. So Israel National News reported that under the agreement that Netanyahu and Gantz just signed today, that as early as July, the government would be able to apply sovereignty in the Jordan Valley and Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, according to the Trump administration's deal of the century. So they're trying to get something done under this agreement as early as July. So they're not going to sit back and relax. They're going to try to get something done like ASAP. The Financial Times reported that the ultra-Orthodox parties have already indicated that they will back Mr. Netanyahu without question, and Yamina would be wooed to join the government with the promise of immediate annexation. This is in almost every article that I read about this, that annexation is the big thing. Prime Minister Netanyahu, you said you're going to annex that. You promised us that in your election. We're all on board. Now you better get this thing done. So he's got 18 months here, but he's wanting to get it done prior to Netanyahu, because remember he said, hey, or Trump being elected, because he said, hey, if a Joe Biden type situation gets elected, I don't know if we can get anything done, because remember, he's got to do it with the United States approval. And wait till you hear what I've got to say about Joe Biden here in just a moment. And so in January, the Jerusalem Post stated that Netanyahu feels that the Trump deal is a once-in-a-history opportunity. Not once in a lifetime, but once in Israel's history. He said such an opportunity to secure Israel's future, talking about the peace plan, will not come again. Now, this is Netanyahu. He said Israel must not miss the opportunity in the U.S. President Donald Trump's peace plan. He says this is an opportunity that comes once in history, and we cannot miss it. We have the best friend Israel has ever had in the White House, and therefore we have the best opportunity we have ever had. So you've got to look beyond this. Now, I'll get into the peace agreement here in a little bit, and we'll talk about that in the latter part of the program. But I want to make sure you understand you've got to consider the political dynamics going on in Netanyahu's head. Because he's saying, okay, in 18 months, I've got to turn this over to Benny Gantz. Not going to be prime minister anymore. And I want to secure Israel's safety. Now, Gantz is saying that too, but this is what Netanyahu is saying. And he realizes that the U.S. elections are coming up in November. And he realizes unless something, again, you never know, but unless something weird happens, it's going to be Trump and Biden. Well, Netanyahu's sitting there watching this whole thing. And he's not a complete stranger to Biden. You understand, Joe Biden was the vice president for 8 years under President Obama. So he's no stranger to Netanyahu. So we're looking at this. Think about if you were in Netanyahu's shoes, you wanted to get this done, you would be saying, okay, I've got U.S. elections coming up here in November. There is a chance, a slim chance I might add, but there is a chance Biden could get reelected. I mean, we wasn't sure that Trump would get elected, but he did. Well, so look at it again here coming up in November. I mean, the coronavirus and all this stuff's happening. You never know what's going to happen. But Netanyahu's looking at this and he's saying, okay, if I want to get something done, I know that I've got to consult with Gantz, but I've also got to go and get an approval by the United States. Donald Trump's on board 100%. Would Joe Biden be? Okay, so what happened? Well, on December 27th, just prior to Donald Trump, this is at the end of the Obama administration, this is just prior to President Trump taking office. This was on December 27, 2016. the Tablet magazine reported that there was a phone call from Joe Biden to precipitate Ukraine's United Nations vote, to precipitate their yes vote. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about Resolution 2334 that the Obama administration was going to allow to pass, which says that Israel's right to East Jerusalem and all the West Bank would be illegal, a violation of international law, illegal in the eyes of the international community. And so what happened? Well, on December 27th, 2016, it says the repercussions of Friday's United Nations Security Council vote in favor of a resolution urging Israel to immediately and completely cease all settlement activities in what they consider occupied, it's not occupied, it's disputed, Palestinian territory, continued to reverberate. Now, this is the verbiage of the international community. Hey, they're occupying. No, they're not occupying, it's disputed. The resolution, which declared Jewish settlement anywhere in the West Bank, including the old city of Jerusalem, to be in violation of international law, passed 14-0. The United States did not veto it, and therefore we allowed it to pass. And we just simply abstained. So it was a game-changing action that broke with decades of diplomatic guarantees to Israel, and which enraged American Jewish political leaders in both parties. A wealth of evidence is now emerging, and I looked, and this was in almost the majority of all of Israel's paper reported on this. It said a wealth of evidence was now emerging that far from simply abstaining from the United Nations vote, which is how the administration and its press circle at first sought to characterize its actions, that the anti-Israel resolution was actively vetted at the highest levels of the U.S. administration, which then led a pressure campaign both directly and through Great Britain to convince other countries to vote in favor of it. So they got everybody else to vote in favor of it, and then we just abstained, and it passed. So Tablet magazine has confirmed that one tangible consequence of the high-level U.S. campaign was a phone call from Vice President Joe Biden to Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, which succeeded in changing Ukraine's vote from an expected abstention to a yes. According to one U.S. national security source, the Obama administration needed a 14-0 vote to justify the source called the optics of its abstention. The question comes, did Biden put pressure on the Ukrainians? And categorically, yes, was the response from a highly placed figure within the Israeli government with strong connections to the Ukrainian government sources, who confirmed to Tablet magazine that the Americans had put direct pressure on both the Ukrainian delegation and on Poroshenko personally in Kiev. That Biden told them to do it is 100% or 1,000% true, the source confirmed. Of course, the Obama administration denied the incident, but even though they denied the incident, you have to wonder what all of the Israelis' newspapers reported on this. I went through many of them, and then I went to the Tablet to get it from the actual source. And you've got to be wondering, having heard this, knowing the United States elections are coming up in November, what would be going through your mind if you were Netanyahu about this interaction right here with Resolution 2334, the Obama administration allowing that to pass, 1,000% anti-Israel, saying that their occupation in East Jerusalem is illegal in the eyes of the international community? I mean, we're talking about the Temple Mount here. We're talking about the Mount of Olives. I mean, that's where this is all located. So you've got to be looking at this. What's Resolution 2334? On December 23rd, 2016, the Obama administration abstained from voting on Resolution 2334, it allowed it to become international law. The number one of the UN Security Council resolution clearly stated that Israel's presence in East Jerusalem illegal, a flagrant violation of international law. It reaffirms that the establishment by Israel of statements in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, has no legal validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the achievement of the two-state solution lasting and a just, lasting, comprehensive peace. Now, folks, this is the mind of the international community against the eastern section of the city of Jerusalem and the West Bank, everything they took in 1967. And now you see why the European Union would contact Gantz and say, don't do that, don't annex that, because in the eyes of the international community, it is illegal for you guys to even be out there, to have control of that. But on the other hand, Prime Minister Netanyahu is looking at this and saying, okay, I've got 18 months to get this thing done, where I've got to consult with Gantz, but I've got to talk to get approval from the United States, and then we can get this thing done. And he also realizes that he's got a shorter window than that because of November elections coming up. And then he realizes there's a chance that, you know, could Joe Biden possibly be the president? What would happen to the Trump peace deal if there was a President Joe Biden? Knowing that there was a potential for him to have made this call and getting this Resolution 2334 passed. So there's a lot going on here in the dynamics of the politics over there in Israel. A lot more than you're just going to read in the USA Today or New York Times this afternoon. You've got to understand what's going on behind the scenes. Now, when we get back from the break, we're going to go off into the Trump's peace plan. What was it all about? Is it the prophesied peace agreement? Because we got a lot of new listeners, and we got to make sure everybody understands what this is all about. A lot going on right now.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank Endtime for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
So let's talk a little bit about Trump's peace plan and what's going on, some more dynamics in Israel, and then we'll get off into the peace plan itself. The Bible foretells a Palestinian-Israeli peace agreement that will mark the beginning of the final 7-year period, which will end with the Battle of Armageddon and the physical return of Jesus Christ to the earth. Now, you say, well, this is it. Donald Trump's peace plan is it. Well, in many ways, it does appear to be. Can we say that 100%? Not at this point. If I had to speculate's a huge word here. If I had to speculate, I would say, yeah, it probably fits the bill. But at this point, I can't say that 100%. So that's what I'm saying. I'm living through this. Irvin's living through this just like you are. What happened? Well, Donald Trump, before winning the presidency, he said that he would attempt to do the deal that can't be done. And he was referring to peace in the Middle East. Within 1 week of his inauguration, now you understand, these are the dynamics. Look at the dynamic with a Joe Biden, and then look at the dynamic with a Donald Trump. This is what, and imagine what going through Netanyahu's mind. Within a week of his inauguration, President Trump appointed Jared Kushner and his personal attorney, Jason Greenblatt, two of his most trusted aides, to lead the Middle East project. And they worked tirelessly for the next 2 years. And by January of 2019, the peace proposal, which Trump named the deal of the century, was ready to be revealed. Now, this was over a year ago now. And it was scheduled for April 9th, 2019. But, they wanted to release it, but Israel's government had just collapsed. If you remember what's going on here, I'm giving you a brief history. And new elections were scheduled for April 9th, 2019. Well, Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, asked President Trump to delay the releasing of the deal of the century until after the elections, which, of course, he did. And when the elections ended in a deadlock with no party able to form a government, which has happened 3 times now, and consequently new elections were scheduled for September 17th. Again, Trump delayed the rollout of the peace plan. The September 17th elections also ended in a deadlock with no government being formed. So in an unprecedented development, Israel scheduled its 3rd election in 1 year. That was just happened March 2 of this year. By this time, Trump had become impatient, to say the least. He also wondered if the rollout of the peace agreement might help to break the political deadlock Israel found itself in. So he made the decision to reveal the deal of the century on January 28th of this year. And Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz were invited to the White House for that dramatic ceremony. But on January 28th, President Trump made a speech revealing the overall contents of the peace plan to the entire world. The contents of the deal of the century are also published on the White House website and can be viewed today at whitehouse.gov. So the plan called for all Israeli settlements to remain a part of Israel. Now, this is where we get into a lot of prophecy. The peace plan itself, prophetic. But each one of these things, I mean, they just start laying it out and everything starts clicking into piece like a bunch of Legos. And even though many of them these settlements would be surrounded by territory slated to become a state for the Palestinians, should the Palestinians comply, and it appears for a short time that they will in the future, according to Bible prophecy. The Jordan Valley also was to be adopted by Israel since it was deemed essential to Israel's security. So as you can tell, Trump's all on board. We've said it a million times. Trump's ready to get the thing done. The most important feature of the peace plan was that it took away the Palestinian veto power. You say, well, what's the veto power? Well, it was simply this. In all previous Israeli-Palestinian peace negotiations, the Palestinians had the option to simply get up and walk out of the negotiations, and everything just fell apart. So that was their veto power. Hey, we're just going to get up and walk out. We don't like what's going on, we're done. And they had a veto power at that point because nothing was going to happen beyond that. The international community, everybody that was involved said, well, hey, the Palestinians don't like this, so we're not going to get anything done. Under Trump's peace plan, if the Palestinians refused to negotiate, the Israelis could unilaterally declare sovereignty over 30% of the West Bank, including the settlements, and also over the Jordan Valley. And the United States would then recognize this new reality, which Trump is prepared to do. And since the U.S. has veto power over the UN Security Council, the UN would be powerless to stop Israel's annexation of the new territories. So they're wielding a lot of power here because we're one of the victor nations, one of the 5 victor nations that hold we're a permanent member of the UN Security Council. If the UN, like the EU, just talked to Benny Gantz and said, hey, don't do that, there's going to be repercussions. Well, Donald Trump is saying, hey, what are you going to do? I mean, we are, you can't do anything through the United Nations because we have veto power. And if the United Nations tries to pass a resolution against Israel, we're simply going to veto it. Well, Netanyahu knows that as well. And so there's a whole lot more going on here than just, hey, okay, Israel got another government over there, yeehaw. No. There's a whole lot more going on than that. So after Trump's peace plan was revealed, Prime Minister Netanyahu and Benny Gantz endorsed Trump's peace plan. And so this caused the deal of the century to have limited effect during that political campaign. And during his campaign, Netanyahu declared that he would immediately implement Trump's peace plan if he won the election. Now, keep that in mind when you understand the dynamics of the deal that was just signed in Israel today. Netanyahu is going to be the prime minister for 18 months, and then he's done. So do you not think, I talked to Irvin about this just before I came on the air, you realize that Netanyahu is going to plan on mashing the gas on this thing while he's in office. And, I mean, we're not going to have to wait months and months and months and months. He's seeing that he's only got a short window of time here, and he's really going to mash the gas on it. So Gantz also claimed that he would implement the peace deal, but he wanted to do it through international approval. And those who were politically savvy understood that the international community would never endorse Trump's plan. Because one of them would be Resolution 2334. So as a result, the publication of the peace plan undoubtedly helped Netanyahu's campaign. And so at the end of this election, when the votes were tallied, Netanyahu nor Gantz had enough seats to form a government. And that's why we went off into the back and forth that we've been in for the last several weeks, these guys trying to form a government. But Gantz had a problem. During his campaign, Gantz promised that he would not include Arab parties in his governing coalition. And he did this because he knew Israelis did not want the Arabs to wield the power in an Israeli government. And so most of the Arabs did not believe Israel even has a right to exist, and they certainly don't believe that Israel should exist as a Jewish state. So imagine having some of them in the upper echelon of our government here in the United States. It kind of makes you wonder right now, doesn't it? And furthermore, with the Arab parties enjoying 15 seats in the Knesset, they would demand key positions in any coalition, and that means they would have access to Israel's military secrets. So it really gets to be a mess after a while once all this stuff starts coming into play. So as soon as Rivlin appointed Gantz to put together a government, he moved immediately to include the Arabs in the coalition. Well, of course, that broke one of his major campaign promises, and it caused 3 of his Jewish coalition members to publicly declare that they would not vote to support a Gantz government propped up by Arab votes. And that meant it would not be possible for Gantz to have the required 61 votes in the Knesset as well. So that leads us to Netanyahu and Gantz going back and forth until finally they formed a government. And you know, according to everything that I could read just prior to airing today, those issues have been resolved. And as of today, it appears that Netanyahu and Gantz have signed an agreement to form a unity government. Now, with that said, we've got to look at Trump's peace plan because, remember, Netanyahu and Gantz have both said that they want to implement it. The only difference is that Netanyahu and President Trump want to get it done. Gantz wants to bring in the international community. And you and I, now we know the international community is never going to advocate President Trump's peace deal. It's not going to happen. They want they want it to be negotiated. And everybody come to, negotiations and let's weigh this thing out. That's not how President Trump's doing things. And Netanyahu loves it because he's saying, hey, we can finally get something done here. And so the question is, does Trump's peace plan match the peace plan prophesied in the Bible? And this is very key because students of Bible prophecy, I know many of you are out there, Endtime 1000, people teaching Bible studies, pastors showing this material in their churches, people just wanting to know what's going on. We've been anxiously awaiting the unveiling of Trump's peace plan for years now. Everyone wanted to know if this plan would be the one that would launch the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon. Because the Scripture prophesies 5 things that would be contained in the prophesied Palestinian-Israeli peace plan, which will trigger the final 7 years. And I'm going to list each of these things and show where the prophecy is in Scripture, and then describe what the deal of the century says about it. And then we'll see if it's the one. Again, in our opinion, it definitely could be the one. And now how they're going to bring the international community and all of them in on it, because they've got to be involved. The Antichrist is going to be involved in some form or fashion. And so we've got to look at it. So the Bible says that there's going to be a Palestinian state created. We know that from the prophecies of the Bible. Matthew 24, 15, 16, and 21. Jesus said, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. For then shall great tribulation, there's going to be great tribulation such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. So Jesus foretold an event called the abomination of desolation. Other passages clearly say this event would happen 3.5 years after the Palestinian peace agreement is signed. And he warned that the Jews that are living out there in Judea would have to flee for their lives. So obviously Judea will be under enemy control by that time. So Jesus was prophesying the scenario that's getting ready to happen. You understand? Well, the deal of the century, President Trump's deal of the century on page 12, says that the vision is for a fair compromise and contemplates a Palestinian state that encompasses territory reasonably comparable in size to the territory of the West Bank, Judea, and Gaza pre-1967. And so the map accompanying Trump's peace plan shows the vast majority of the new Palestinian state will be in Judea. That will be a direct fulfillment of Bible prophecy should this take place. And it appears that it will. So we'll continue on with this peace plan when we get back from the break.
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-ENDTIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
So according to the prophecies, the Jews are going to be able to stay in that new Palestinian state. Matthew 24, 15 through 16. It clearly states that there will be Jews living in Judea, the modern-day West Bank, at the time of the abomination of desolation, which will occur 3.5 years after the Palestinian-Israeli peace agreement. So what's the deal of the century say? Well, on page 12, it says the Israeli population located in the enclaves that remain inside contiguous Palestinian territory, but that are part of the state of Israel, will have the option to remain in place unless they choose otherwise and maintain their existing Israeli citizenship. So this describes Israelis living inside the new Palestinian state, being able to stay there while they're still being citizens of Israel. Now you realize this is a 2,000-year-old prophecy. Jesus gave this prophecy. And from Donald Trump's peace plan, this is exactly what's going to happen. Should this all play out the way it looks like it's going to, this is going to be the fulfillment of a 2,000-year-old prophecy. Then the Bible, according to Scripture, the Temple Mount's going to be placed under a sharing arrangement. Revelation 11, 1 and 2. The Bible says, John said, "And there was given unto me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, measure the temple of God and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot for 42 months. So really, this passage is painting a picture of a temple with Jewish worshipers on the Temple Mount. And then John was told, don't measure the outer court of the temple because it's going to be under the Gentile control during the last half of the final 7 years. So you go to the deal of the century, Trump's deal of the century, page 16. It says Jerusalem's holy sites would remain open and available for peaceful worshipers and tourists of all faiths. People of every faith should be permitted to pray on the Temple Mount in a manner that is fully respectful to their religion, taking into account the times of each religion's prayers and holidays, as well as other religious factors. So there's going to be a sharing arrangement up there. Well, John, in John chapter 11, verses 1 and 2, prophesied that the Temple Mount will be placed under a sharing arrangement just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon. Y'all understand we're living through 2,000 years, a 2,000-year-old Bible prophecy. And it's like President Trump and them went through Bible prophecy and said, okay, now let's write up a peace plan. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling at some point. And then the Bible says there's going to be a Jewish temple built on the Temple Mount. Now, this one's kind of questionable as far as what from Trump's peace agreement. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4, it says, Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, the second coming, except there comes a falling away first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So this passage describes the Antichrist sitting in the temple of God. He obviously couldn't sit in the temple of God if there were no temple to sit in. And then again, in Revelation 11:1, John was told to measure the temple. He obviously could not do that if there was no temple to measure. So these are a couple scriptures letting us know that there will be a third temple built on the Temple Mount near the location of the first two temples. We don't know 100% where that was, but it'll be near there somewhere. Well, okay, so what's the deal of the century have to say about that? Well, on page 16, it does not comment on the building of the temple, one way or the other. But it does say that people should be permitted to pray on the Temple Mount in a manner that is fully respectful to their religion. So the Jews believe their religion requires them to build a temple on the Temple Mount. They already have all the furniture, the utensils, the architectural drawings in preparation for the building of their temple. And the Jewish people will not sign a final agreement that does not provide a path for them to build their temple, which was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. You understand that the President Trump's peace agreement is a basis for negotiations. Nobody's signed that. That's not a signed peace agreement. That's a basis for negotiations. And, you know, the Palestinians could come back and say, hey, we're willing to allow Israel to build a temple if you give us this. I mean, something like that. It's a basis for negotiations. It is not a signed peace agreement. But, you know, the difference is that they, if they don't want to play ball, President Trump's going to allow them to annex 30% of the West Bank. And so somebody needs to get off the couch and get something done here on the Palestinian side. So this kind of would allow, you know, them to rebuild their third temple. It's an avenue for that. We'll put it like that. And then in the prophesied, the biblically prophesied peace agreement, Israel's going to control an undivided Jerusalem. So in the eyes of the international community, remember Resolution 2334 that the Obama administration allowed to pass. It sees them in the Jews having control of the East Jerusalem as a flagrant violation of international law. But the Bible says that all the way to the end, Israel's going to have control of an undivided Jerusalem. So in Zechariah 14:2 it says, "For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city, Jerusalem, shall be taken, the houses rifled, the women ravished. Half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city." So Zechariah 14:2 is describing the Battle of Armageddon, and it states that half of Jerusalem will go forth into captivity to the armies of the Antichrist during the Battle of Armageddon, which indicates that all of Jerusalem will have been under Israeli control until Armageddon. You say, well, what about the deal of the century? Well, on page 17, it says, "Jerusalem will remain the sovereign capital of the state of Israel, and it should remain an undivided city." The sovereign capital of the state of Palestine should be in the section of East Jerusalem, located in all areas east and north of the existing security barrier, including Kafir Aqab, the eastern part of Shafut and Abu Dis, and could be named Al-Quds or another name as determined by the state of Palestine. And, you know, this is going to leave the Temple Mount, the Kidron Valley, the Mount of Olives under Israeli control, which is what the Bible says is going to happen throughout the end time. So there you have 4, possibly 5 of the 5 characteristics laid out in the Israeli peace, in the prophesied peace agreement. So the question then becomes, is the deal of the century, I'm going to recap here, I want to make sure you get it. Is the deal of the century the peace plan prophesied in the Bible? Well, under the prophesied peace agreement, there's going to be a Palestinian state in Judea. And if you look at the map that President Trump has in his peace plan, it allows for a Palestinian state in Judea. Jews can stay in the new Palestinian state. Temple Mount, I've had people tell me over the years, there's no way, if there was a 2-state solution created, those Jews would run for their lives. They're not going to stay out there. That's not true. You don't know some of them people. We have a very, very, very good friend out there that he said, hey, I'm willing to go to my grave before I'll leave here. He's got an olive business out there making olive oil and this, that, and the other, and there's no way he's going to leave. And I know all of them have that same mentality. There's a friend of ours that comes into our Jerusalem Prophecy College, and he says, I'm not leaving. You're not pulling me out of here. Well, that's a lot of them have that mentality. So yes, a lot of them would stay. Bible says the Temple Mount's going to be placed under a sharing arrangement. A Jewish temple is going to be built on the Temple Mount. Israel's going to retain control of an undivided Jerusalem. So with that said, we've got to review what's going to happen under the Trump peace plan. Well, there's going to be, just like the prophesied, there's going to be a Palestinian state in Judea. Jews can stay in the new Palestinian state. The Temple Mount is going to be shared. Now, Trump's plan does not mention specifically whether a temple is going to be built or not. But it does say Israel will control an undivided Jerusalem. So as you can see, at least 4 of the 5 conditions, and then there's an avenue for the 5th one. At least 4 of those 5 conditions of the biblical peace agreement are included in President Trump's peace plan. The one element of the prophecy not included specifically is the building of the third temple on the Temple Mount. So where do we go from here? Well, the nations of the world have grown weary of this 70-year-old Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Palestinians have rejected every peace proposal that has ever been offered, and they're rejecting this one. And so, you know, to many people's surprise, though, think about this. 23 nations have voiced their support for President Trump's peace plan. I mean, 7 Middle East nations. I think about this: Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, and Israel. So far, only 2 have rejected the plan: Iran and the Palestinians. So there's a very, very, very good chance of something getting done here. And that's why I wanted to come before you today. Many of us have been waiting for Israel to form a unity government. Well, it appears that happened this afternoon. They inked a deal. And they're going to have an emergency unity government. Neither side had a majority like they're supposed to have. So they formed a unity government. Netanyahu is going to be in power for 18 months. Then he's going to turn the reins of power over to Benny Gantz. And you can see the political dynamics. That's one of the main things I wanted to get across to everybody, is that there's a whole lot going on there. I mean, these guys, they look at history, they look at Scripture, they're looking at their future, they're looking at the security of their land. Are they able to defend? Is it a defensible situation? I mean, if they go back to 67 borders, that's indefensible to modern military. But if they had the Jordan Valley and they could annex that, then they see that as something that they could protect. They could protect the whole eastern border, the Golan Heights, down through the Jordan Valley. They could protect all that. And so it's very important for them. Now you can kind of see what's going on in Israel. They formed a government. Netanyahu is wanting to charge straight forward, get something done on President Trump's peace plan. So Benny Gantz is wanting to hold back. Netanyahu is weighing everything in the balance. The U.S. elections. What happens if a Biden is elected? And, of course, we're watching that as well, but he's recognizing that he has the best friend Israel's ever had in the White House, who is willing to get something done. And he's looking at his peace plan and he's saying, you know what? We've got to go for it right now. And President Trump's even going to allow them, whether the Palestinians want to or not, to annex that area. So we'll have to see what happens, see how this all plays out. But man, isn't it exciting to be living in the end time, watching thousands of year-old prophecies coming to pass right now.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook